On the shoreline at Prestwick Beach, the body of a Swedish woman was found face down in the sand. The post-mortem conducted in Scotland recorded the cause of Annie's death as drowning.
When you were speaking to the police, what did...
I wasn't speaking to the police. I didn't speak to the police. Wait a minute. Did Andrew say we spoke to the police?
Undertakers made a discovery that shocked her family.
Bruise to the head indicated that she had been done harm by someone. There was also significant bruising to her arm.
Mothers should cry at the graveyard, but they should not ask questions.
Bruising is something that happens when you get blunt trauma when you're alive.
Our daughter was heavily beaten up. You don't get big bruises from out of nothing.
Is somebody somewhere trying to hide something?
Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel.
Today I want to talk about Annie Borjesson. Now Annie was found lifeless, face down, fully clothed on a beach in Scotland, and the official story was that she did this to herself. However, there have been strange details that have been coming out, and a lot of people think the situation was actually foul play. And then when the case was classified as secret because it had sensitive information that could hurt national interests, the conspiracy theories were flying. So, as usual here on my channel, I want to give you guys the facts. We'll discuss the theories and then you can decide for yourself. I want to thank SCENTBIRD for sponsoring this video again and my subscribers for making it possible. Thank you so much. SCENTBIRD is a monthly subscription service where you get 3 pretty large perfume samples. So this is the size sample you would usually get, and this is the size you get with SCENTBIRD. They've got different cases. It's really easy. You pull it out, you pop it in, you just twist it up like that, and you spray. This I love. This is called Glam Jasmine because I want to be a glam Jasmine. It's jasmine, blackcurrant, and sandalwood. It is so, it's warm and floral, but not like grandmother floral. And I think the blackcurrant is giving it like a fruity, sweet, very balanced. They also gave me this one, which is Lavanila vanilla grapefruit. And I like the sound of that because it seems like it'll be fresh and warm, like not too sweet. Oh my God. It tastes like a lemon pound cake. Then there's like a woody thing at the end. What are the notes on it? Cedarwood, lime, pink grapefruit, and vanilla. Oh my God, I'm really good with the smells. You know how people are like, I'm not good with smells. I think I'm good. I don't know. I think it'll be a really good gift if someone likes fragrances, but you're not sure what fragrance they would like. This can give them an opportunity to try them, and you can get them the perfume without getting them the wrong one. So I know last time some of you guys wanted to get it and you couldn't because you weren't in the US, and I'm really sorry about that. But they are now shipping to Canada. So if you are in Canada and you want to try it, you can. So it's $11 for your first month. Make sure to use my code, and that is NoorJ30. The link is in the description. And thank you guys for sitting through that. And thank you to SCENTBIRD for sponsoring this video. Again, I really do appreciate it. Okay, let's dive in. So the whole thing started on December 4th, 2005. It was 8:30 a.m. and a man and his dog were walking on a beach in Scotland when all of a sudden the man discovers Annie. Annie was fully clothed, face down, and she was completely covered with seaweed and sand. Some of her personal items were near her, such as her backpack that had her passport in it and 2 books that were written in the Swedish language. In addition to that, according to her family, she had a 300-pound uncashed check, which 300 pounds is like almost $400. So she had that on her, but there were some items that were missing, but we'll talk a little bit about those later. So the guy called the cops, the police came, they cordoned off the beach, and then oddly enough, before the autopsy was even completed, they came out and said that there were no suspicious circumstances. So to understand what happened to Annie, you need to know who Annie was. Annie was from Sweden. That's why she had those Swedish books with her. And she had moved to Scotland about a year ago in 2004, a year before her death. Sorry, not a year ago, a year before her death. She had moved there to study English. She actually spoke many languages. And she had a scholarship. She was there as a student. And then when that ran out, she kind of didn't have the residency required to stay there. She was looking for a job, but it was kind of hard. She kind of had to leave Scotland, but she was planning on coming back. The reason why I say she was planning on coming back is because she had paid a whole month's rent of December. She was found December 4th. She had paid all of December's rent in the apartment she lived in Scotland. She had just purchased what they call a leisure card, like a membership card to the local pool that she went to. She was also supposed to be traveling back to Sweden the day before she was discovered. That's why she had her passport in her backpack with her, as well as those Swedish books. Turns out those were library books. This is going to play in later about her hair, but her hair was very important to her. Only her hairstylist in Sweden could touch her hair, and so she was going to go back. She had an appointment for December 5th to get her hair done. From that evidence, it seems like she had a plan. The plan being she's going to Sweden, she's going to tie up some loose ends, get her hair done, come back to Scotland and live in the apartment that she paid rent in and go to the pool and continue looking for a job. But that's not what happened. Once they identified Annie, they went to her apartment in Scotland. In that apartment, they found some things missing that indicated that she may have spent the night somewhere else. The things that were missing were her toiletries, makeup, toothbrush and toothpaste, as well as 2 new pieces of underwear and her favorite t-shirt that she slept in. They weren't in her bag, and so people think that these are overnight items and they weren't there, so maybe they were left at a place where she spent the night. This is also going to factor in later. So let's talk about the things that happened the week before her death, because those things are some of those strange details that make people think there's foul play involved. First of all, she has a really good friend in Sweden called Maria. And she was close to her mom too. She was always calling her mom and Maria. Now it's December 2nd. The last day Annie's seen alive is December 3rd, and then she's found dead on the beach early in the morning of December 4th. So on December 2nd, Annie shows up unannounced to her old job. She used to work at a place called the Scotch Whisky Heritage Center. And it was 5:30 p.m. on a Friday night. She shows up to her old job, and the first person she sees is Kat. Kat is her old coworker that she knew when she used to work there, and so they're sitting there, they're talking, everything seems fine. Kat says that Annie seemed totally fine. But then at 6:15 p.m., so about 45 minutes later, things changed. Her demeanor changed. According to Kat, Annie got a call from her mother. This is what her mother said was the conversation on the phone. Quote, "Hello, Annie, this is Mummy." Annie, "Hello, Mummy." The mother, "How are you doing? Daddy and Charlie have been talking to you and they are worried." Annie says, "I cannot talk right now. I'm sitting here with Kat." Annie's mom says, "But Annie, tell me, what has happened? We are worrying about you." Annie says, "You have to respect this, but I have to take care of myself." Annie's mom goes, "Okay, but call me tonight or tomorrow." Annie says, "Well, we'll see about that." "Okay, bye then," says Annie's mom. "Bye," says Annie. Remember the part where her mom says that Daddy and Charlie have been worried about you? Daddy and Charlie are Annie's father and brother. And Annie had said some things that were a bit concerning. First of all, she asked her brother how people can be traced on a computer. She also told them to stop calling her on the house phone. And she told her dad that she was going to get married soon. And the weird thing is, even though she called these people, and not only did she call them and they said that they spoke to her, but there were other people around who witnessed the phone calls. There is no record of the calls with the phone company. Quote, "The Scottish police informed the family that this call was not registered as a received call on Annie's mobile, nor was Maria's earlier call registered as a missed call. According to the police, there were no calls in or out of Annie's mobile in the last 3 days of her life. Now, the first thing that came to mind when I read this was, well, she seemed like she was kind of paranoid. Maybe she deleted those calls all off her phone and everything like that. But that still doesn't explain why it's not reflecting on the phone records that Maria got from the phone company. Like, even if you delete the calls on your phone, your personal device, that call there should be a record of it with the phone company.
Phone calls made to her very best friend in Sweden have been erased. My daughter had never had to pay for them. Her best friend in Sweden never had to pay for those telephone calls.
And now this isn't the first instance of things seeming to be wiped clean from devices and accounts, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's continue with the first few days before she died. That same night on December 2nd, there's another call between Annie and another friend. Again, not registered on Annie's phone, but the friend says this call took place. It says, there was a final conversation with a friend in Sweden, not Maria, between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. that night. Annie told her that she was going to a party in Edinburgh and that it was due to start at 10 o'clock. Annie seemed positive about the party, but was reluctant to say any more about it. Maybe Annie went to this party, maybe she didn't. The next day, December 3rd, is the last day Annie is seen alive. So Annie lived in an apartment building called Linton Court Apartments. And this is where it's located on the map. And this is called something like a serviced apartment. So there's staff there, and she shares like the kitchen with a bunch of other people. And one of the staff members, called Jane, remembers seeing Annie in Linton Court at around 1:15 p.m. Quote, she informed the police that Annie had been depressed about a relationship with a man, but hadn't wanted to talk about it. Annie apparently told someone else at Linton Court that she, quote, had to take care of something and had, quote, made a decision that might change her life. Who could this person be? It turns out that there was actually a creepy guy in Annie's life, and she told people about this creepy guy. His name was Martin Leslie, except that's not his real name. He's an imposter. He was pretending to be a famous rugby player called Martin Leslie because Annie, she liked rugby and she liked guys who played rugby. Like that was her type, according to people who knew her. So Annie met Martin at a nightclub called Mood. He was very insistent, offering her champagne, and she was refusing, but they ended up talking for several hours. Then, remember how she bought a leisure card at a pool before she left when she paid her rent, bought the leisure card for the pool? Well, at that very pool, a few days before her death, Martin had showed up unexpectedly, and he freaked her out. This is a quote from her friend Maria. The last time I spoke with Annie over the phone, we spoke about how much fun we would have when she arrived at Stockholm Skavsta Airport and when she told me that she would book an appointment with her hairdresser. The only thing that was bothering Annie at the time of our conversation was the strange behavior by a man, Martin Leslie. Annie met this man whom she knew as Martin Leslie 2 times during her last week in life. The first meeting made her feel almost a little scared, and during our last phone call, she told me about his strange behavior at a rugby gathering at Murrayfield Rugby Club, and she told me that she had now decided to try and keep away from this man. So the staff member Jane saw her at 1:15, and then at 2:15 she's at an ATM in Glasgow Central. But if you look at the map, it seems like there's not enough time for her to have made it to the ATM from her apartments if she took the transit. But if you change it and you put a vehicle in there, you'll see that there is enough time, which is a clue or maybe a suggestion that it's possible or likely that someone drove her there. What happens next is that Annie actually is having a hard time pulling money out of the account. She starts by trying to pull out £100, which is a little over $100, and that doesn't work. And then she tries again, but for less money. So this time she tried for £50, and that also doesn't work. But the reason why she couldn't take out money is for insufficient funds. Now remember, her family said she had this uncashed check on her, but she doesn't use it or whatever. We don't know what that's for, but she cannot pull this money from the ATM. The next time you see her is at the airport, Prestwick Airport. Quote, "The first image from the airport, Annie is wearing the dark winter jacket which was found near her body on Prestwick Beach the following morning. A red and white fleece, trousers and trainers. Her long hair is tied in a ponytail and she has a bag over her shoulder. And at 3:15, she walks through the overhead walkway to the terminal building. In the second image, around 3:16, she is outside the terminal building walking towards the car park, which that's like a parking lot. And so why was she at the short stay parking lot? Was there someone there? And now, according to police, the reason why she was there, they think, is to find an ATM to try to pull more money out, right? Because she was trying to pull out money and she couldn't. Well, when you go there and see that area, there are actually no ATMs there. So I don't know if she knew that or she didn't know, but there were no ATMs there. So she's outside there. And then there's this weird discrepancy, according to the reporter.
She asked the police for any CCTV footage they had of Annie. They refused. The police finally relented after one of Scotland's then leading politicians, First Minister Alex Salmond, intervened. But Guya couldn't make sense of the images.
But they were without any date or time. We asked for the time and date, and we got them, and they don't fit.
It seemed in places to have been edited.
They reenacted her locations when she was caught on the CCTV footage. And even running down the escalator and running towards the thing, it still wouldn't be enough time for her to have made the distance that it shows she made on the CCTV camera, which leads people to believe that that footage was somehow edited, which is adding to the theories that there's some sort of cover up with this case. At around 3:19, she's seen on CCTV camera, and here she is re-emerging from the car park using a different entrance near to the escalator. And according to her friend Maria, who looked at the picture, she says that Annie looks angry or annoyed. So this is really strange because she goes to the airport. She seems to go in, go to the parking lot, come back out, and then leave in a matter of minutes. Like she spent all of 4 or 5 minutes in the airport after taking several hours to get there. She leaves the airport and she starts heading towards the beach, the very beach that she would be found in. So even though she didn't have a plane ticket, based on the fact that she had her passport with her and she was trying to get money to go there, it seemed like she was trying to catch a 6:30 flight that was going to Sweden from that airport. It seemed like she was going to buy the ticket on the spot, which you could do. However, it also seemed like she didn't have money. And so maybe that's the reason why she left the airport. What ends up happening next is that she is spotted by 2 men. 2 men say that they're walking on the beach and they see a figure
standing by the water's edge and looking out to sea.
Andrew Montgomery told police at the time he thought the figure he'd seen on a distant shoreline was a woman. 14 years on, his reflections don't fit the conclusion it was Annie.
So this figure, about 100, 150 yards away, visibility wasn't that good. But we couldn't even see whether it was a woman or what that person looked like.
And they thought it was weird, but they didn't say anything. They didn't do anything. They kept walking. Then they come back and they said that 20 minutes later, that figure is still standing there in the same place looking out into the water, and that it occurred to them that it looked like this person was contemplating like ending it all.
I can't even tell you what was strange about it, but it was noticeable. And as we came back, lady was still there. And I'm resisting saying lady.
And then they kind of dismissed it and didn't think anything of it until the next morning when they saw that there was a body and it was cordoned off and everything like that. And that's when they went to the police and said, hey, by the way, yesterday we saw this figure, da-da-da-da. And this is what led the police, a lot of people think, to conclude before the autopsy was done that this was self-harm and end of story. But there was another witness. This witness claims to have seen Annie more close up a description that fits Annie rather than the figure that those two men saw. And this person says that Annie was talking to two men. And the men said that they saw Annie staring off into the distance at 4:30. This person says that they saw Annie talking to two men sometime between 4:30 and 5 o'clock. Now, the interesting thing here is that that second sighting of Annie speaking with two men was never followed up on.
You don't recall getting any phone call from the police?
No. I definitely did not talk to any police.
So could those two men have been involved and had a different story, and maybe it didn't happen the way they said?
I wasn't speaking to the police. I didn't speak to the police. Wait a minute. Does Andrew say we spoke to the police?
I don't know. And that brings me to the investigation, because either it was just botched and, that was as far as it went, or some people think of something more sinister, which is that there was a cover-up. But I'm just going to tell you what happened and what didn't happen, and then you can decide. First of all, there was unknown DNA on Annie's hands.
There is a DNA on her hands from an unknown woman.
Quote, investigations also found an unknown DNA on her hands. Before any sort of autopsy had been performed on Annie, it was announced by the press that there was, quote, no suspicious circumstances, end quote, in her death. The police and the authorities were so convinced it was unaliving, sorry for the censorship on YouTube, that no door-to-door inquiries occurred, no forensic team was sent, and no samples were taken. The theory of the police is that, she went out to sea, drowned herself, and then washed back on shore, and that's how she was found, with the sand and the seaweed. But what people are saying is it was really strange how she was found with her items really close to her, when the way the tides and the waters work, it seemed like things would have been a bit more scattered, kind of like she was placed there. Furthermore, there were some really important items missing. Remember, I mentioned that. Her fleece, she was fully clothed, but that fleece was missing. It's seen on the CCTV footage. Here's a quote from that reporter about the red fleece. The fleece, clearly visible on the CCTV footage, has become a source of contention between the family and the police. The family maintained that the police attempted to suggest that Annie had not been wearing a fleece. But the disputed fleece was not the only personal item which was never traced. Something of greater significance was missing too. And the other thing missing is her Filofax. And her Filofax was, according to her friends, an extension of her. She never went anywhere without it. Furthermore, she always kept extra cash in the Filofax. We can't find the Filofax, not at her apartment. It's nowhere to be found. Furthermore, in that Filofax, she puts everything, her appointments, her contacts, who she spoke to, who she was going to see, where she went. Stuff that's really important if you're trying to figure out what happened to her. And here is where we get into the weird scrubbed things and phone records and all that. It says, Maria Jensen's experience was equally unnerving. When she asked her telephone company in Sweden to send her a copy of all the phone calls she had made in the autumn of 2005, she expected to find that it contained the record of many calls to Scotland. It contained none. Hours of conversation with Annie had not been registered or charged. Maria attempted to contact the company's security department for an explanation. They refused to speak to her. As the family's campaign for a fatal accident inquiry started to gather support in Scotland, there were unsettling incidents. Maria's phone rang repeatedly, but when she answered it, there was silence at the other end. There were problems accessing email accounts. These escalated after Maria sent an email pointing out that her friend's full name, Annie Borjesson, was almost identical to that of a journalist in the United States who, it was thought, had been investigating rendition flights through Prestwick Airport. The family were so intimidated by these incidents that for a while they stepped back from their campaign. The very airport that Annie was last seen in, Prestwick Airport. If you guys remember, during the when 9/11 happened and you had the War on Terror, there were a lot of people that were arrested, that they wanted to torture them, interrogate them with torture, but certain countries like the United Kingdom and America, torture is outlawed. So there was this thing called rendition, and this has been investigated on. Basically, they circumvented their torture laws by sending these prisoners to jails in countries that allowed for torture so that they could be tortured legally. And this was like a scandal. Well, Annie Borjesson wrote about this. And so Maria was like, could this somehow be connected? Is this mistaken identity? Is this, what's going on? Is this somehow connected? The fuel was added to this fire of a conspiracy, of a government cover-up, when the Swedish authorities and the Scottish authorities released heavily redacted documents about this case. And to explain these redactions, they said, quote, explaining why the documents had been redacted, Daniel Andersson from the Swedish Foreign Ministry wrote, information has been deemed classified as secret according to the provision of Chapter 15, Section 1 of the Public Access to Information and Secrecy Act, and has been redacted to the attached file. The reason for this is that the information concerns Sweden's relations with a foreign state and a foreign authority, and it can be assumed that a disclosure will damage Sweden's international relations or in other ways harm national interests. I'm like, if the investigation was botched in Scotland and then Sweden releases things that show that the government in Scotland messed up, that could hurt their diplomatic relations. This is the most benign explanation, in my opinion. Or you could take it all the way to be like, this has to do with Annie, maybe that reporter, maybe there's something with Annie. Adding to the speculation was a document. There was one document that was released, but the date was dated before Annie died, which made people think that she was on their radar and they were writing things about her before she died. According to Scottish authorities, that was a typo. And they said that the right the right date is at the top, and that date that's more in the middle is a typo, and to disregard it. And then they shipped Annie's body back to Sweden. And this is where it gets even weirder.
Director Damien Melville was so troubled by the deep bruisings he saw, he wrote this letter to Annie's insurance company and notified the Scottish police.
I can verify that she did have significant bruising to her body, which for reasons I cannot explain, I believe were not included in the autopsy report. I find this to be quite unusual considering the circumstances of her death, and I recommend a contact with the hospital coroner in this respect.
Something was really off with her body and her hair, and it didn't match what they were told initially. Quote, we have obtained a copy of the autopsy report signed by the two doctors who conducted the post-mortem. It noted that the body was heavily contaminated by sand and seaweed, that the lungs were congested, that the air passages contained a frothy material. The conclusion, death by drowning. No sinister significance was attached to an unexplained depression in the skin, small areas of bruising in the right temple, scratched abrasions on the left arm, and two patterned roughly square contused areas on the right arm. But the family says Annie's injuries were more extensive than that. Quote, the undertakers in Vårgårda, Sweden were surprised by what they found when they opened Annie's coffin. Gun Daneberg and Lennart Svensson discovered big bruises on her right arm and side, about the size of a palm, as well as bruising behind her right ear. They insisted that these bruises, far beyond anything included in the autopsy report, were not the result of post-mortem lividity. We consider we have the knowledge to state the difference between bruises and corpse patches on a body. This is leading to the whole foul play thing. How did she get those bruises? According to the Scottish authorities, she bumped on some rocks and stuff in the water.
There were minor injuries on her body, but police were satisfied they had been caused by coming into contact with rough objects in the water.
And that was kind of it with that. And then we got the toxicology. She had a very small amount of alcohol that is consistent with if you had drinks, like the night before you had 1 or 2 drinks, and then this morning you have a little bit left. That's how much alcohol was in her system, way below the driving limit. And then on top of that, she had no drugs in her system or medications or anything. So it seemed like being under the influence was not a factor in her death. And then the last weird thing happened with the autopsy, and that's her hair. Now, remember how I told you that her hair was her pride and joy? She had beautiful, long, waist-length hair, and she was very particular about who could touch her hair. Like, she went to Sweden to get it cut. But when they brought her body back and the family saw her hair, they were shocked.
It was removed, it was pulled off from Annie's scalp.
Because it was chopped, it was hacked between lengths of 6 to 16 centimeters, which is like 5 inches or 1 inch, like between that, like just a few inches of hair was left. It says the waist length hair had gone. To her mother, it looked as if it had been hacked off, leaving bunches on the scalp of between 5 centimeters and 16 centimeters. The family were horrified. They had given no consent for this to be done. So long story short about the hair, they end up finding out that the undertakers in London admitted to cutting her hair, but they only admitted to cutting a few centimeters. They said between 4 and 5 centimeters, so an inch or so, a few inches max of her hair. Now she had waist-length hair. A few inches of her hair would still leave her with hair this long, but her hair was cut really short. Why? They said they did it to make her look more presentable. And then this journalist, he ends up speaking to experts in the field, different undertakers and blah, blah, blah. And they all said that this is pretty much unheard of. We don't need to cut the hair to do the things, even if it's the brain or whatever, to get in there. We don't have to cut the hair. And we like to usually keep as much of the body intact as possible for presentation. So it just didn't make sense why her hair was cut. So that's what we know about the autopsy. Then there are the weird things with the CCTV. The footage is really blurry. There was another expert that said that they're assuming that it's her in some of these CCTV footage images, but it really doesn't look like her. It could look like a man. It just looks like a figure. This figure had a backpack on, so they said, okay, that's her. She had a backpack on. So there's even some doubt regarding whether those last sightings of her are actually her.
I think the light was so poor that I couldn't be absolutely certain it was a woman.
So those are the facts. Now let's discuss the theories. So let's start with the official theory, and that is that she did this to herself. Let's talk about the things that kind of indicate that she might have done it to herself. First of all, it seems like she was maybe paranoid if these things weren't happening. Again, there's that saying, just because I'm paranoid doesn't mean they're not watching. It could be that she may have been having some sort of mental break or something and was believing that she was being followed and stalked. That's why she wiped her laptop clean, asked her brother about being traced by the computer. Then she told her family not to call her at home. And then she was telling people, don't worry, I'm going to take care of this myself. Then there's the issue with the financial problems and her wanting to be in Scotland, but not really being able to because she was having difficulties with the residency once she finished her schooling and she didn't have a job. And then maybe she was shocked that she couldn't withdraw the money. Then she thought, oh God, I don't even have 100 pounds. And then, okay, well, let me try 50 pounds. I don't even have 50 pounds. Like maybe that was really disturbing, but she still went to the airport. She goes to the airport, she goes out to the car park, and she seems upset. According to her friend Maria, her facial expression seemed annoyed or angry or upset. Maybe she was just so distraught at what her life had become and she decided to end it that day at the beach. I don't know. Maybe. That's what police think. So then with the whole financial problems though, then I keep remembering her family saying that she had a $300 uncashed check. And her family also said that she had received unemployment benefits from Sweden and that she had money coming in from that. So that's also lending to the whole, well, you know, maybe she didn't have as bad as a financial situation as it seemed. Then there are the plans that she made. She's paying for her rent. She's getting this membership to the pool, you know, but then Martin shows up to the pool, you know, which is leading me to the next theory, which is the foul play theory. The first thing is that her mom feels like the body was staged because of the way it washed up with all the items next to her, but yet certain items were missing and could not be found. This is what her mom said. I walked out to see where Annie's body was found, and after 220 meters, the sea was barely at my knees. If Annie, who was a strong swimmer, drowned herself, she would have had to be out a considerable distance, and it would be impossible for her body, bag, and coat to have been washed up at exactly the same spot. The other thing that is leading to the foul play theory is the bruising. The extensive bruising that was much worse than what was initially thought.
Investigative journalist Marcello Mega is one of few people to have seen Annie's post-mortem photographs.
There was a massive bruise to the temple, probably by a blunt instrument, the sort of blow that would knock most people unconscious, I would think. There was also significant bruising to her arm.
It says here, Borjesson added that there were square contusions on one of her daughter's arms and several other areas of bruising. One was in the shape of a hand on her right temple, which brings us to who drove her there. If we're operating on the assumption that there just was no time for her to use transit to get there, and several people are saying that. The reporter mentioned that the timing doesn't match, and it seems like someone drove her there. Her mother said that too, quote, "We spoke to a member of staff at Linton Court Apartments in Edinburgh where Annie lived who said she saw my daughter at about 1:30 p.m. on the day she disappeared. She would not have had time to walk to Haymarket Station, get a train to Queen Street in Glasgow, and walk to Central Station for the connection to Prestwick to be there at 3:15 p.m. We believe someone must have driven her. If someone drove her, who was it? It's definitely someone who is not coming forward and saying they drove her, which brings us to the Martin Leslie stalker theory. So this guy, they found out who he was. He's actually a rugby player. He's just not Martin Leslie. They say that the family knows his name. There's no proof he did anything. However, it's just this weird thing where Annie was saying that he was giving her the creeps and she was trying to avoid him. There was this other thing that I put it here in the theories because I'm not sure it's fully a fact, because first of all, it's from a tabloid, and then the links to this article, when I would click on it, it was like a dead link. So I don't know if they removed it because it turned out not to be true, but I do find references to the claims made in that article, if that makes sense. They basically said that someone had seen an email that was from Annie's account and it was pinging from her apartments, and that the last email she had sent out was to Martin. But then again, her mother said that when she accessed the emails, they were all deleted. I don't know, but I just want to mention that with the disclaimer, and then you can do with it what you will. And then what about the claim that Annie told her dad she was getting married? Remember that? The family has a website where they're talking about the case and their justice for her, and they're trying to keep her case alive. They talk about how when she told her dad that she was getting married, her grandma decided to give her like a chunk of money for the wedding. But now that she's dead, they're using that chunk of money as like a reward for people giving her items or information that leads to, you know, figuring out what really happened to her, blah, blah, blah. She told her father that she was getting married. Was that true? If so, who? Was this part of something that she was saying that wasn't true? Or was there another guy that we don't know about? I don't know. And then we have the most sinister conspiracy of all, and that is the government. The government did it.
There were rendition flights that went through Prestwick, and I think that we know that it was going on at that time.
This government theory comes from, it started from two things. First was the fact that they classified it as secret and said it might hurt national interests, but also the fact that Maria said the phone records were completely erased from the phone company, and when she tried to speak to the security department, they wouldn't talk to her. And then she said she started getting these menacing calls of someone just being silent on the phone, and it freaked her out, and that once she emailed about this name matching the journalist. She feels like all this stuff really kicked into high gear.
The journalist who happens to share the same surname, Christina Borjesson.
Her name was Christina Borjesson and my daughter's name was Annie Christina Borjesson.
Was it a case of mistaken identity? Which is really hard to believe because a simple Google search, the first result that the woman who this journalist is looks nothing like Annie. The theory is stating that this journalist was about to expose, you know, the Scottish airport's role in this and the Scottish government's role in this, which they deny, and that, you know, the government got a whiff of this and either Annie was involved in this or they thought Annie was involved in this.
I haven't seen any evidence, and I'm not aware that anyone else has seen any evidence that actually links what happened to Annie.
So it was a conspiracy theory, I think.
I don't know. I feel like it would be a really bad case of mistaken identity, and I just feel like they would be a bit more sophisticated than that, but I don't know. So then people are saying, well, maybe it's not about the reporter. Maybe there is some previous connection between Annie and the government already that has nothing to do with this journalist. And they mentioned that document that had a date that looked like it was before she died, you know, but then is it a typo? So some people combine the foul play theories and say that the Martin guy did it, but he was planted by the government. Like, how perfect that he's a rugby player and she likes rugby players and he pops up here and he pops up there, and people think that he was like an agent set to like take her down and da-da-da. I don't know. It's a lot. It's a lot. If you ask me personally what I believe, I am kind of torn between self-harm and the Martin guy doing something. And I'll tell you why. She seemed like she was paranoid and distraught, which either this is not really happening and it's adding to the self-harm theory, or this Martin guy really is messing with her. Then the financial issues and her not being able to get a ticket and her wanting to stay in Scotland, I feel like that a lot of people who end their life, it's financial stuff. And people don't know and they're just simmering with it and they can't take it anymore. So that's also likely possible. Then there's like the fact that certain overnight stuff is missing. Her Filofax is missing. Somebody drove her to the airport. This guy was freaking her out. Maybe the investigation was botched and then this guy got away with it. But I'd love to know what you guys think. Please tell me. And if you can think of explanations about like the phone company and why those weren't recorded, I'd love to know, because that's stumping me. If you know something about phone companies or whatever. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you to SCENTBIRD for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to use my code, link in description, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye. Stay safe. Bye.